Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Women Petpreneurs podcast with your host, Mariel Quendo. So my guest today is Miranda Seim. Hey, Miranda.
Hi.
You may have remembered she was a guest not too long ago, but we didn't get into the thing we actually wanted to talk about. So here we are, take two. Right. And so for those who are maybe just listening to this for the first time, just tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, well, let's see. I've been grooming since about 2011. I'm mostly self-taught. I would say I've been grooming since maybe about 2017. That's kind of when I started taking in more continuing education and stuff. But I am a wife and a mom and a Christian and a groomer, and I compete mostly in extreme creative, but I'm starting to dip my toes into the breed standards world as well, entry level. I'm an open level creative competitor, and yeah, that's the majority of it.
Okay. So what we wanted to talk about last time was the fact that you run a pet pantry, correct?
Yeah, so it's actually primarily for humans, but we do offer pet food as well because that's something that a lot of people will feed their pets before they'll feed themselves.
Oh yeah, I was in the pet store the other day and I ran into another groomer friend of mine, and we were talking about why we price the way we price so we can like live and eat. Okay.
Yeah.
As I am putting $18 treats into my cart. Okay. And I'm like, well, yeah, my dogs will always get $18 treats. Okay. But, the whole pricing so that I could eat equivalent to my dogs.
Dog, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I just want to eat as good as my dogs do,
I just
right?
want to eat as good as my dogs. Okay. So yeah, I get that. You know what? The animals are fed, kids are fed. Sometimes the adults take what's left.
Yeah.
All right. So just let's walk me through the whole starting a pantry to start off with, and then why you added the pets in, and how does that kind of work?
So I've always had a passion about feeding people. I don't know if that comes from just like Midwestern hospitality, but someone shows up and you fix them a plate, whether they just ate 20 minutes ago or not. You fix them a plate. So much of our lives revolve around um, food and having a healthy relationship with food. Um, so much camaraderie and family time is spent around meals. And the thought that there are people out there that don't have that because they don't have a meal um, just isn't acceptable to me. So through my church, well, I started volunteering at like soup kitchens and food pantries and Bismarck, North Dakota. We do a huge event every year around Christmas. It's Open Your Heart campaign, where they take our community center, takes in tens of thousands of pounds of food, donations, and they put together baskets and feed like thousands of families. It's an incredible event, but there'll literally be hundreds of volunteers there, and you line up in this huge conveyor style, and you have your box, and then you walk down the tables and another volunteer will start just taking cans and filling your box, and then you can volunteer to just help fill the boxes, or you can distribute the boxes. And I did that several times when I was a kid, and it just was really eye-opening to me. I've never really had to want for food. We've been broke before. We've been lower middle class, to
Yeah.
where groceries are expensive, or you might not get the name brand thing, but that is not the same as literally having no
Yeah,
idea where your next meal will come from.
I could write the cookbook on 100 ways to use eggs.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Extreme couponing. Yeah. You know what? So been there, done that. And I grew up not without meals, but without any extras because money went very quickly in my household because my father drank away a portion of
yeah.
his paycheck, but my mother always made sure we had meals. All right. So there were but no snacks in the house. So you wouldn't
Yeah.
find a box of cookies in my house or anything of that nature. It's why my sign up, have an automatic deduction come out of my credit card is the Pacific Northwest, the food pantry, the big one on this side of
Yeah.
this. I don't even have to think about it. Take the money out every month, do it with whatever it is you need to do with it. Here in Squim, we have those little they're the libraries, but they're the pantries.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
they have people can just go and they could just put some canned goods in there, and people need them, they can take them.
And that's where we started. That's how my pantry originally started.
Okay, so tell me about it.
Yeah. So, several years back, we started a building project for my church, Peace Lutheran Church in Lincoln, North Dakota. And I was on the building committee, and we were trying to think of ways to fundraise and do, how do you fund such a big project when you're just a small country church, um, and still fulfill the mission of the church, still do good works, still um, serve your congregation and your community, while undertaking this massive and expensive project, in the scale of our community. It was massive. We're no mega church by any means. um, and during this process, we were approached by another fundraising community, or another good works community, that were putting up those free little pantries, and they wanted to put one on our property, and asked us if we would shepherd that and maintain it and keep it filled. And so I volunteered for that project, and it was beautiful. They built it and painted it, put it out there and everything. It was great. All I had to do was keep it filled. So we started very small with just asking, our congregation members to bring food on Sundays, et cetera, fill the basket, or we had a little wagon at the back of the church, fill the little wagon so we can fill the free little pantry. And that's kind of how it started. And then as a fundraising project, for our building project, I actually built, my husband and my parents and I built a coffee kiosk, because our little bedrock community doesn't have anything like that. You can get coffee at the gas station, and that's about it. So we built a drive-through coffee kiosk that we put up in our church parking lot, and it was self-contained water system. I had a gray water tank. Basically think of a mobile grooming trailer, but a coffee kiosk. So I had a water heater in there, and an espresso machine, and whatever. And I watched YouTube videos and read a few books, and learned how, because I didn't even drink coffee at the time. Learned how to make all the fancy coffee drinks. Um, and I started running that for 2 hours in the morning before I would go to work. Um, and that was a fundraiser project. And I didn't price anything, it was all free will donation. So you got every walks of life would come, so you'd have the people who are extremely well off, come through. Instead of hitting up a Starbucks or a Caribou Coffee, they'd come through my kiosk and donate graciously. And then you'd have other folks come through that, all I've got is a couple dollars, or I don't really actually have enough today. That's fine. Here's your coffee, and I got to really meet and talked to so many different people, and I think what I ended up being more than anything was just a friend. Um, a lot of these people just would come and just bare their souls to me in that 5 minutes at my kiosk window. And um, I got to hear a lot of hardships and celebrate a lot of, goals. And it just was something that was really eye opening for me. And being able to pray over different people if they were comfortable with that. And through that, it inspired me to that, okay, this is a temporary thing that I've got going, this building project. But how do I keep going after that's done? And so once we had the funds secured for our building project, it was like, okay, I want there to be a food pantry. Because I'm filling this little pantry twice a day sometimes. I said, this isn't enough for the needs in my community. And there's nothing. So Lincoln is a little bedrock community of Bismarck, which is the state capital. And there's no services out there. There's no public transportation. Um, there's no grocery store. All there are is a couple convenience stores. So it was like, if a person has fallen on hard times, maybe they don't have a working car, maybe they lost their license due to addiction, DUI, whatever the case may be, they still got to eat.
Yeah.
I don't really care what your past is or what your current situation is, or even if you're making the wrong decisions and that's why you can't afford food, it doesn't matter. You still need to eat. Um, and it's just something I felt really strongly called to do. So I petitioned for a space in our new building to become a pantry. And what we ended up doing was we built a new kitchen in the new space, and so then they allowed me to turn the old kitchen into a food pantry space.
Okay.
So it's not a huge space by any means, and I do have grander plans to build a larger space and a building of its own on the church property, but. Um, yeah, I guess I don't know. I could talk forever, but I could tell more.
Well, no, no, I would like to hear more about, the building you would like to build. So how will that happen?
So right now we had to vacate, or we had to get the right of way vacated for the land in between us and our neighbors. Originally, when the plot was planned out there, they had planned for there to be a road there, and that never
Okay.
got built. So basically, the space that would have been that road wasn't really owned by them or us. And, you know, I'm very much I'm gonna act, and then I'll ask for forgiveness later if it was something I wasn't supposed to do. But our church leadership has asked me to pump the brakes a little bit and do it the right way.
Okay.
Um, so we got that right of way vacated. Now we have to get a planning and zoning committee to look at the space and decide how big of a structure can we put up, and how far away from the roadway does it have to be, and all those things. But um, I've planned out what I think is a sustainable building, because if you go too big, you can't sustain it, and if you go
Right.
too small, you outgrow the space. And so I've planned out what I feel like is a sustainable size for us. And it I want it very much so to be inviting, um, and to be like a grocery shopping experience. And that's how I have mine. How I have the pantry that I currently run set up as much as I can, because it's only like a 16 by 20-foot room. Um, and I have grocery rack shelving all around the perimeter. And then there's a large two-door clear door freezer, and then just your standard refrigerator freezer, um, is what I have for space in there. And then I have one rack that is set aside for personal care items, sanitary items. And then we have a cleaning section, and then we have our pet food section. And then the rest is for human consumables.
Okay.
Um, yeah. And so I try as much as I can not to put like limits on things. A lot of pantries you go into, it's like you can have one of this and one of that. Um, I try not to do that as much as possible. Or a lot of pantries too will have prepackaged boxes, and then we get a lot of that back. So that's a lot of what's donated to our pantry is stuff that they got from other pantries that were prepackaged boxes that they're not going to eat that food. And that to me just seems wasteful. At least some people will donate it back, but that that there's a lot of people that just throw it away.
Yeah.
Um, and so I would rather they take the food that they know they're going to use rather than me deciding what they should use.
Yeah.
Um, that it just seems more practical and more efficient. Sorry, the dogs are going off.
That's
But
okay. People who are listening to this are dog people, correct?
yeah, yeah,
Okay. All right. So where do you get a lot of the donations? So your
yeah,
donations, I'm assuming, coming in the form of food and money, correct?
correct. Yeah.
Right. So where does
Um,
the food come from?
so we partner with Great Plains Food Bank, which is like a tri-state area. So I believe it's Minnesota, North Dakota, and Montana, that they supply with food. So what a food bank does is they store mass amounts of food and then coordinate distribution to pantries. So you've got a bank and you've got a pantry. That's the difference. And so a lot of times when you go through a food bank, you can get a lot more bang for your buck. So I still have to pay for a lot of the food, but there's a lot of government programs and stuff too that will provide certain food items for food pantries across the country. But so the USDA foods are usually free to us. And sometimes there's a lot of those, and sometimes they're really cool and really good. And other months there's almost none. And so you can't bank on there being free product. So you have to plan for that financially. Um, but I'm usually able to order around 1,500 to 2,000 pounds of food for about 500 to 600 bucks a month. Um, and I order once a month through Great Plains, and then sometimes they'll have what's called agency shopping, where I can go in from week to week and shop or get the product that they've had in overstock. Um, but so that's where the bulk of our food stuff comes from is through Great Plains. How we personally fund that is we have a partnership with our I don't know if other states are like this. Maybe but in North Dakota, gaming funds, so like the bars that have like pull tabs or um, the little slot machines and stuff in the bar, the funds that go into that have to be distributed through charities or nonprofits. So there'll be a committee that's in charge of deciding how those funds get distributed. Um, and you can, as a nonprofit, you can go and apply for gaming funds. And
Okay.
so we did that with our local gaming funds in Lincoln, and they supply us with $500 a month.
Okay.
And so, and then the rest of it comes from donations from our congregation and our community.
All right. So I got a question for you. Right.
Mhm.
So right now I have a monthly donation to a food bank. Okay.
Mhm.
If I wanted to do another monthly donation to something local,
Yeah.
all right. So advise me a little bit that. What am I looking for?
Um, so it all depends on how involved a person wants to get. Um, y- Most nonprofit organizations will have open books, so you can go in and ask, how do you get your funds? How are your funds spent? Are you a 100% volunteer based organization, or are there paid officers? And that's not to say that an organization that has paid officers is a bad thing. That is not a bad thing at all. But you can also ask to see how much are they paid. So, because all of that is going to come out of donated funds. Now, could I do a lot more in my community if it was a paid position? Probably, but I don't want it to be that at this point. That it's a labor of love. At this point, I don't want compensation for it, and neither do any of my other regular volunteers. That's not why we do it. Um, but I would say I put in probably 10 to 15 hours a week, um, or not a week, excuse me, a month into my pantry. And then I have two other volunteers that probably also put in 10 to 15 hours a month into the pantry. So, I mean, all in all, we're putting in about 40 45, 50 hours a month altogether into our pantry. So it is definitely not a full-time position, but we could probably do a lot more. But I would look for somewhere, I would volunteer somewhere, honestly, a time or two before deciding whether or not I want to give a monthly donation to that
Okay.
organization.
Okay. All right. Like I'm the same way. I mean, it pains me to see people go hungry for whatever reason.
Yeah.
People going hungry should not be a thing. Kids going hungry. Ooh, I'm wondering if the school lunch program.
Mm. And that was going to be something that I touched on is I think the main community that my pantry serves are the people that fall in between the cracks. So we all know that there are government programs out there to help people that have maybe fallen on hard times or maybe can't work due to disability. So we have disability, we have SNAP benefits, food stamps, those kinds of things. However, there's a lot of people that ride a fine line in between poverty and making just enough to be considered over that poverty line to where then they do not qualify for financial aid. And it is such an arbitrary line that, like, and I know because I've been there. I've been on that line before,
Hmm?
to where I made $13 a month too much to qualify for aid. And it was like, cool, what's that $13 gonna get me? Um, and that's the community that I'm really reaching out to and trying to help. Um, we also provide a lot of resources for people to know what is out there that they can apply for. So our elderly community, might qualify for certain benefits. Our youth qualify for the backpack program at the school. Um, and then we have, uh, and there'll be other things too that aren't even food related. So free haircuts at, this event, for people who can't afford that, just getting getting the resources out there to people, I think is a big part of it too. But I forgot what your original question was.
Well, actually, I think what I'm going to inquire about with the school district is their backpack program. If they have one,
Yeah.
if their backpack, I think, like I said, I hate to see kids go hungry because I can, again, not going hungry, but like just enough to sustain.
Yeah. Yeah. And my favorite part is the people who garden and then they bring in fresh produce from
That
their.
was my next question.
Yeah, that's my favorite is people get so excited to get fresh produce from a garden. And there's nothing that says I love you to me more than that. So and that's another big thing. Like a big part of why I do this is I want people to know that I love them, that they are loved, that they are worthy.
All right. So you're in North Dakota, correct?
Yeah.
So do you get any hunters that donate deer?
Yeah, that's a tricky topic because we partner with Great Plains. There are rules and regulations to what we can and can't offer in the pantry. So I can offer wild game, but it has to have been processed in a USDA approved facility.
Okay.
So
I
you
mean,
can't have cut it up in your garage. It has to go through a butcher block.
okay. I mean, yeah, and I understand the point behind that.
Yeah. Yeah, and our patrons do too. They totally get it. But yes, we do get that. We do get wild game donated. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. All right, so let's talk about the pets.
Yeah. So PetSmart is probably the biggest donator for us. But they donate to Great Plains. So we get PetSmart packaged food um, through Great Plains and are able to offer that to our community. And then just recently, we were well, we apply. Okay, so in thanks for Thanksgiving, this is actually how my pantry started. My kickoff event was a big Thanksgiving event because I didn't have a space yet to have set up for regular shopping. So for Thanksgiving 3 years ago, I took applications, which I didn't turn anybody away. And that's another thing too, is some pantries will require you meet certain income guidelines in order to serve you. And I don't operate my pantry that way. If you feel you are in need, you are welcome in my pantry. Um, but so for Thanksgiving, we took applications and put together a Thanksgiving meal. And then I'm talking everything from the turkey to the pie, stuffing, potatoes, corn, green beans, um, marshmallows, brown sugar, like everything that you would need, sweet potatoes, all of it. And we put together a meal or a box of food for you to do your Thanksgiving meal. And that first year, I think I served something like, I don't know, it was something like 75 families, somewhere around there. The second year, that jumped all the way up to like 135 families.
Wow.
And then this year we did 170, yeah, 170 families.
Wow.
Um, and that was over 1,000 people this year
Okay. So,
that we served. Um, and so that's actually how it started. And then once I was able to get a space for food, but in reaching out to different organizations, because that cost us about $10,000 to put on this Thanksgiving meals. Um, and so we had to fundraise in up above what we normally would do. And so we went to other organizations outside of our immediate community to request those gaming funds. And one of them happened to be a animal, a rescue, um, and they were in charge of the gaming funds for one of the bars. And so we asked them for a donation, and then they came back and said, "Hey, by the way, we have more pet food than we have animals in homes at the moment, or because it's a foster organization. So
Right.
like we have more food than what we have fosters. So we'd like to donate food to you." And so now we're actually getting in even more pet food, because before, with our budget where it's at right now, we would limit that. We would actually take the 50-pound bag of food and open it and then section it into smaller amounts so we could be able to offer it to more people.
Right.
Um, and so now we're actually getting in enough that we don't have to do that. So that's pretty cool.
Nice, nice, nice. Now, if any people who are listening would like to donate, to you particular, to your pet pantry, your food pantry, how would they go about doing that?
So I can provide a link. As it is operated through my church right now. We are in the process of filing for our own 501(c)(3), so that the ND, so it's the Lincoln ND Community Covered is the name of my food pantry.
Okay.
Um, and we're operated through Peace Lutheran Church of Lincoln. And so I do have an online donation link, and you would just note in the comments that you're donating for the community covered.
All right. So just make sure I get that link so I can put it in the description of the podcast.
Absolutely.
Okay. So all right. So you're looking at to have a whole new building, correct?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know going through government in planning and zoning is just gonna take a little time.
Yeah.
All right. So do you have maybe like a loose figure on when this will be up and running for you?
Um, I would like to be hopeful enough to say in the next 2 years that
Okay.
I could get it up and going. I have currently about $30,000 fundraised for it
Okay.
already. And my congregation is full of very handy people. So I think we would be able to do a lot of the construction ourselves.
Okay.
And so that would save us a lot. We were going to jump back in 2020 and get it going. So that's when I actually started fundraising for it. But then, of course, COVID happened
Yeah.
and we pumped the brakes. So, and then at that point, it was like, okay, well, we really need to do a lot more research and make sure that where we're putting it is the right place, and just make sure we have all our ducks in a row so that it is the most sustainable that we can make it.
Okay. Cool. Very good. Mm, that's awesome.
Yeah,
You know?
it's going to be really great. Because right now there's a lot of logistics issues with,
Yeah.
our building is not designed for pallet jacks, to be bringing in 1,000-pound pallets of food and stuff like that. So it's a lot of man labor. We have to carry everything back and forth and whatnot. Whereas the new building is designed with an overhead garage door and a loading dock, and there'll be a lot of logistically, it'll just work a lot better.
Good. Yeah. You know what? Logistics is really good.
Yeah.
And I hope you have a good zoning department because zoning can make and break a project.
Well, luckily, our congregation has been blessed to have our pastor is a civil engineer, so
Ah, there
he
we
he knows how to speak to those people, so it helps a lot.
Yeah, you know what? When I was starting my business in Connecticut, at the time, I don't know what it is now because I've been out of Danbury for too long. but Danbury had an awesome zoning department. They really wanted your business to get up and running and off the ground. And they
Yeah.
would help you do it. Now, the town directly to the north, okay, again, it's been many years, New Fairfield was what I would like to call a fiefdom. Okay.
Okay,
Um,
what's the question?
a fiefdom. All right. They were the knights and the lord of the manor, and everybody else was nothing but serfs and slaves.
Yep.
Okay. So they made it really difficult for people to do anything.
I have a lot of community support around this project, so I do feel like once we have the approval, it'll go really quickly.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of convi- convincing and people having the right time. Timing is a lot of it, and
All right.
so that's kind of what I'm playing into right now is just waiting for it to be the right time.
Right. Now, if somebody listening is thinking, you know what, I would like to do uh, a food pantry in my area, what would be your advice to them?
I would say start with your food bank because they will have all of the resources you need to get started. Um, Great Plains Food Bank was amazing. I went in there and said, "This is what I'd like to do. How do I do it?" And they had manuals and booklets and
Yeah.
templates already made for me, and the ability for me to take a look at the guidelines that other pantries in my area had put together. And so I was able to look through their stuff and pick and choose what worked for me to create our guidelines. It was really, really helpful and very, very well organized, which I am not. So it was very helpful for me. And anytime I have a question, they're right there to answer. So,
Awesome. Awesome. Miranda, thank you so much for
yeah,
taking time out of your day to be here. I think what you're doing is remarkable, and I wish you
thank
well.
you.
And I'm actually now going to call the school and see if they need money for their backpack program.
Yeah. I know
All
our
righty.
backpack program is a huge success at our schools. So,
You know what? I kind of wish they had it when I was going to school.
yeah.
Okay, so everybody, thank you. Thank you, Miranda, for being here. And join us next week when I interview someone else making a difference in the pet industry.
Thank you so much, Mary.